Tonight, we dive into the esoteric realm, the reality beyond our spectrum of perception and understanding. From the beginning of this platform, we've been asking the primordial questions. Who are we? Where do we come from? Where are we going? And most importantly, why are we here at this moment in time? Did we agree to being here to learn a new lesson, or was it pure chance? What happens when we die? What's in the astral realm? And what is our true history? All of this and much more coming up with tonight's special guest.
You are listening to Veritas. If this is your first time, welcome home. To listen to tonight's full interview and all of our material, join the Veritas family and click on the subscribe button at veritasradio.com. You can make your purchase with a credit card, PayPal, cash, check, money order, and even cryptocurrency. We are now accepting Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Ethereum. Don't forget to visit the Veritas store for focused life force energy, MMS, CBD pure hemp oil, Divinia water, pure organic sulfur, flash drives with all our Sanitas and Veritas seasons, and other great products. And if you want to get in touch with Mel, want to be a guest on this radio program, have a guest suggestion, or have feedback, just click on the contact button of our website at veritasradio.com. And if you're listening on YouTube, like, subscribe, and share it. And click the bell to be notified when new interviews are available. And now, here's your host, Mel Hostelrick.
Tonight's special guests are Magen Martinez and Joseph Anthony, the Sedona Psychics. Magen is now sharing her gifts with the world to help others dealing with grief, individuals seeking clarity, and those ready to take the next step on the ascension path. Magen is a true Renaissance woman, a multimedia artist, visionary entrepreneur, an actionist dedicated to building a better world. Her website is divinemsm.com. And Joseph P. Anthony, as a leading psychic and professional astrologer for more than 25 years, Joseph has been featured on countless television and radio programs and has been the astrologer of choice for many noted athletes and celebrities. Lectures frequently, he helps you to understand the importance of your soul and being able to comprehend the symbols of the subconscious through the use of astrology. And we have more comprehensive bios on our website, and Joseph's websites are planetswithin.com and josephpanthony.com. And directly from Sedona, not too far away from here, I would like to welcome Magen Martinez and Joseph Anthony to Veritas. Hello and welcome.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
Fantastic.
Well,
yeah, living the dream.
Absolutely. We haven't been dealing with the esoteric topic for quite some time, but this is the foundation of this program. As I said during the intro, the primordial question, why are we here? Who are we? But most importantly, the reason why we're here. Why don't we begin? I read a little bit of both of your bios, but I'm always interested to know what led you to be who you are today. You must have had some eureka moments in life. Who wants to go first?
Go ahead, Magen.
Okay, I'll go first. It's it's a long story, but I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. I did not come to doing this work in a traditional way. I basically was activated. I would say about 8 years ago into my full abilities, and I really not even full abilities yet. I'm still something that's a work in progress, but what I am really is an interdimensional telepath. And so I use the word psychic. People are familiar with that, but that's not really exactly what it is that I do. And what happened for me was I had met a psychic medium who told me I could do what he could do, and spending time around him, and then the combination of that and losing my father, who passed away from cancer, which filled out my emotional body, activated my abilities that were kind of just trickling in up until that point. And then once I had both of those experiences, the exposure to the frequency and the filling out of the emotional wheel, I started causing power surges. Things were jumping off of shelves. I could hear all these voices. And so I set out on a journey to understand who I was and why this was happening to me, and how to live with this new ability. And that was about 8 years ago. And on the journey, I ended up having contact from extraterrestrial beings and ascended masters and angels. And I ended up working with people that are working on the new financial system. And then I had been doing that exclusively. I did some work for one of those government agencies, one of those 3-letter agencies, doing like remote viewing and deciphering messages from off planet for them. And that's really how I got kind of deeper trained. And then I and then a few years ago, I decided to open up and use my abilities to help people, just, regular citizens around the world that were, and that kind of honed my skills as a medium. And now I'm no longer taking clients as a medium as of last week, and I'm moving into my life as a mystic. And so that's kind of an abridged version of how I got to where I am today.
Before I go with you, Joe, just one thing jumped out at me when you were discussing your bio, Megan. You mentioned the new financial system. Any relation to the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset?
Yes and no. So there's a lot of misinformation out there, and there are multiple groups that are vying for the position as the new system. And I just happen to work with some gentlemen that are working on that. And I've been kind of guiding and communicating messages from upstairs to them on how to build it, who to work with, and that sort of thing. So so it does have something to do with a financial reset that's occurring, but most of the stuff that's on the internet about that is misinformation.
We'll get back to that. Now, Joe, tell us about your journey.
Well, it started when I was born, and as far back as I could remember, I had this burning curiosity about who I was and where I came from and why was I brought to this family? Why do I live in this town? It was. I think I came out of the womb asking questions, and I couldn't find any answers. To be honest with you, I grew up in New York, and to a traditional Italian family that just straight off the boat, and for many years, I was just searching and searching. I started reading all kinds of publications and all kinds of material based on mysticism and astrology and whatnot. And I still couldn't find any answers. But as I got older in life, in my late 20s, I began to really dig deeper into the esoteric and metaphysical side of it, primarily the astrology and the symbolism. And I began to read all of the mythologies and the stories and whatnot, and I began to piece it all together. And I realized that basically that everything in this universe is basically energy. I studied some quantum physics. I've just been fascinated by human nature my entire life. And when I got to all of this metaphysical stuff, I realized that basically it's a symbolic language for understanding the source. The source communicates with us through symbols, through dreams, through interpretation, through feelings. It's beyond the 5 senses. And we all have this ability, but you just have to be able to use it or utilize it because we're all part of the source. So my journey started from a very young age, and it really didn't start to blossom until my late 20s. And then it really took off in my 30s. And, in my 40s, it was just like, I think I've unlocked the keys to the universe, but by studying numerology, astrology, all of it, all the symbolism. And so I've studied all the birthdays, all 366 birthdays out of the year. When I talk to clients, they give me a birthday and a name, and I'm already tuning into them within the first couple of minutes. And I know what they're all about, what's going on in their lives, the whole 9 yards. So it seems to come natural to me. I know I've done this before, probably another lifetime and many other lifetimes. But I'm also fortunate enough to be born on a birthday that has natural psychic ability, like Megan. She also is a natural psychic. There are certain birthdays that indicate a strong psychic connection to other realms of consciousness. So I would say, my path, I've discovered my path in my late 20s, and now I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing here. And that is to bring more light to the world in terms of information and knowledge and remind people of who they really are.
I'm not a psychic like you, but do I Do I estimate that both of you and even I grew up Catholics?
Yeah, I was raised like culturally Catholic, like in a Mexican American household. But we really were mostly just, the kind that show up for midnight mass
Midnight Mass
and
on the
Ash Wednesday.
24th.
Right. I was a Catholic light at about the age of 12. I said, this is all hogwash. And I told my parents, I'm not doing any of this stuff anymore. And being the rebellious one in the family, they let me do what I wanted. And then I studied religions, and I totally understand what, Catholicism is all about.
This is why I'm asking you, because I was an altar boy for many years, but I'm also just out of the womb asking questions. And I got in trouble so many times because I questioned the narrative. And this is just what's happening right now. I mean, I understand the dogma. You're not supposed to question dogma. But even right now, we are not supposed to even question science, which has become dogmatic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, what's going on, what I've discovered, and what Megan, I'm sure, has discovered as well, is from an early age, we are indoctrinated into a certain belief system because our parents got that and our grandparents got that. And, society just keeps passing it along. And so from the moment we're born, we're brought into these boxes, these boxes of belief. You're this, you're that. You're supposed to do this. You're supposed to get this education. You're supposed to make this much money, go to this school. You're supposed to be a good little Catholic boy or Catholic girl. And you're constantly being directed your entire life. But that cycle is about to break. And we see it now thanks to the internet and technology, and also some form of energy that's coming in that seems to be awakening us all on some deeper level.
Absolutely. I've talked a lot publicly about my indoctrination and undoing because I was raised in California and spent most of my life in the Silicon Valley. And when you live there, the religion's not really a big major thing. And so you kind of are of this mindset that you escaped indoctrination without realizing that you're being indoctrinated more on the political side of things. And so you have to kind of undo all of that to start to see the truth. And so what I've seen happen, what I think has happened, is that people gravitate towards religion throughout history because people need a purpose and a meaning and a code of conduct for life. And now that doesn't mean that I support organized religion. I can see the benefit of it in people's lives throughout history. But when you remove that, people still want that sort of thing. And so the religion of modern day has become politics and science. And that's why the beliefs around it are so dogmatic.
Would it be safe to say that in order to escape indoctrination, we must unlearn most of what we learned?
Absolutely. Yeah. Go ahead, Megan.
Well, I was explaining this on a show that we just did recently, and I can't, for some reason, I can never remember what the brainwave is. But what Joe was saying about identity and how all these identities that we put on, they really trap us into this illusion or this matrix that we're living in. And so, in order to really shift the brain, when the brain shifts the most, when you do the most change is when you let go of these identities. And they're really, really what we're doing too, is we're moving beyond the personality and into the soul, because the soul is who we really are. The personality is what we develop as an armor kind of for our experience here on Earth. And so the identities are all part of the personality. And the soul doesn't subscribe to any of these identities. In fact, one of the things that happens when you cross over to the other side is there is an angel that cuts away all the concepts of race from you, because those are things that are really highly ingrained in you here and in a human experience, when really there is no race. We're all just souls, right? So you have to carve away all these false identities in order to truly embrace consciousness and oneness.
So true. I want to add that what happens is from an early age, we're totally unsure of who we are. But there are many kids that are coming in today that are highly intuitive, and they remember a lot because of the timelines that they're coming in on. But for the most part, most people just come in and they have to relearn everything that they've ever experienced about their soul, about their spirit. But unfortunately, because of today's society, there's a lot of fear. Fear that the child's not going to get properly educated, fear that the child is going to get sick and needs vaccinations, fear that the child is not going to be successful, fear that the child is not going to be born, with all its limbs and so on. So there's a lot of fear that's being produced at an early age. And this fear needs an outlet of some kind. And so religion seems to be the perfect fit for it, for many families to cope with it. Because if you're a young parent in your 20s and you're having a child or two, you're still a kid yourself, basically not understanding who you really are. And now you're bringing another child into this world. And so you're bringing another soul into this world without learning who you really are. So it's about remembering everything. And so what happens is that we embrace these experiences and these interactions with these adults we call our parents. Then we start meeting other people outside of our comfort zone, which are friends and other family members. And we start to research and look into things, or we try at a little deeper level. And so the first thing that comes up is, our eyes are looking at someone else and they're seeing a male or a female. These days, of course, it could be 29 different genders, according to some. But anyway.
We've got like 92 now.
Yeah, 92 genders now. But anyway, so there's a level of fear that's involved at the very young age that's looking for an understanding or is looking for a meaning or purpose. And so religion fits that bill because let's just say Christianity, for instance, you have a cross with a man on this cross who, you could show them that this man died for your sins and all this other stuff. But, and that's all they know, that the parent knows. So it can't comprehend beyond the symbolism. So it's easy to believe things when you see them and hear them and just take them at face value. But now we're learning, of course, in this day and age, that everything we've been taught is basically one giant fat lie, from religion to the monetary system to politics to, other beliefs that we have been indoctrinated into. And we're seeing it for what it is. This is why society is collapsing right now, or transforming right now, because those old belief systems are going right out the window.
I've heard this notion lately, and you correct me if I'm wrong, because you are the psychist, I'm not. But some people say this notion of the light. If you're dying, go to the light. But I've heard some others who say, don't go to the light, because if you do, you are returning to this realm we call Earth to repeat another life. What's your take on this?
Okay, so actually, there was this soul recycling kind of trap that people were going through, and it wasn't going into light. It was actually, you just fell into a darkness and then you popped out into another life. And I've seen this happen with people. I had an experience like this where I just fell into darkness, and then I'm back here again without having gone into the light, without having been returned to the source and being cleansed. And what happens when that occurs is that you carry a lot of the trauma that you had from the previous life, because you go right back into it. And so this goes into a little bit of what Joseph was saying about Jesus dying for our sins, because when I was a child, now just like you, I had a lot of questions, and I just wasn't buying the whole narrative around religion. And so one thing that troubled me for a very long time was, how is it that this man died 2,000 years ago for our sins, and we can just do whatever we want, and as long as we believe in him and let him into our heart, it's all good. And so I didn't really quite understand what they were saying until I had spent all this time traveling through the astrals and understanding the process of death. And this is what it truly means when they say that Jesus died for our sins, is that when you pass away, when you die and you cross over to the other side, you go through a place called the lower astral realm, which can kind of also be referred to as a purgatory. And this is a place where people draw like black magic from, right? So there's that magic is magic, and it comes from a lower place, and so it's limited. And the reason that we have guides that help us cross over, like either angels will come to get you or family members will come to get you to help bring you into the light, so that you can return to God and not into this fake soul trap. is because this is a very difficult place to traverse if you are not a skilled astral traveler. And so you go through that, and then you go off to what is a human heaven, and it's kind of off to the side from where we are. And that's where the soul kind of awaits. And heaven is actually something that it's not a physical place, but a place within the mind of the soul. And you experience whatever it is that your soul views as heaven. And during this time, you go through what is called a life review. And you are the one that conducts your own life review. There are guides and aids that help determine where you're going to go next based on your performance here down on earth and the agreement with your own soul. But during this process, when the veils of illusion are removed, people are forced to look at themselves honestly, something that they don't have to do down here. And they get to see exactly who they were. And this is where the idea of sin comes into play, right? So you see who you were, and sometimes your sins are so just unnerving to you that you assign yourself to a place called hell or to the dark death realms. And these were actually created by us to punish ourselves. And really, God is just unconditional love. And so God doesn't judge you or punish you. We choose to do that as ourselves. So what Jesus did with the lifetime is he turned on his Ka body, his astral light, his light body, and he left a trail of light through the underworld so bright that when people left here, that they would find their way back to God instead of sending themselves into these darker dimensions and getting trapped for however long they get trapped down there. And so that really is what that story is about. And there are a lot of stories in the Bible, and it's a collection of stories that were clearly written by men over, allegories to help teach you things, peppered in with, other stuff to help misdirect you, and but some truths in there. And so that's the kind of understanding that I came to about what it really meant, that story, or what it really meant for him to have died for our sins. And to sin really just means to miss the mark, right? That's really all it means, is that you missed the mark. You didn't do the higher half. You chose a lower vibration, and you're just realizing that, because what we're doing here overall is that we're mastering our emotional bodies so that we can return back to the oneness with God.
The first thing I would say is that what I realized by studying metaphysics and quantum physics is that everything in this universe is energy. We know at a subatomic level that our cells are vibrating, and there's nothing there but empty space. It's just some sort of vibrating energy. And that we're made up of this source. Whatever name you want to give it, it doesn't matter. It is pure light, is pure consciousness, whatever name you want to, it's beyond our comprehension in these physical suits. Because I've actually had two very dear friends who had near-death experiences, and one is very well known and, was dead for 27 minutes and came back to life. And the stories that he tells is just incredible. But basically, if you look at everything as energy, pure energy and consciousness that's vibrating, and that this physical plane is actually a heavy density, third dimensional field that is basically vibrating at a lower rate. So when we cross over and we leave this physical plane, we are going through the realms of consciousness, or space and time, where we're getting lighter and lighter and lighter. And we ultimately connect to the source, like Magen was saying. But first, we do have to go through these processes, yes, of judging ourselves. We relive everything we've ever experienced. I mean, everything. And then we eventually are guided back towards this bright, shining light that is, as my friend said it, incomprehensible. There are no words to describe it. The love that was felt when he connected with the energy was beyond euphoric. Okay, and I can understand that. So basically, when we say returning to the light, yes, I believe that there are other extraterrestrials or interdimensional beings that are far more advanced than we are. that know how to access, fourth dimension, fifth dimension, understand consciousness. They understand how to travel through space and time. The evidence is overwhelming for this. And they can, if they are manipulative or they feed off of human souls and energy, yes, I'm sure they'd want to harness some of that light. Unfortunately, it's a lower vibrational light. But when we see the light, and I often see the light when I'm going to sleep or dreaming, I could see the light sort of, that doesn't mean I'm dying. I'm accessing information. And there's a way to do it, because I've had several experiences with ayahuasca and magic mushrooms, and it is very profound how when you start activating that pineal gland and you start seeing the light and you start seeing multi-dimensional light and colorful light and the geometry and all this other stuff. So, but this light that you're talking about, Mel, I think is very distinctive, and it's the right light because you start feeling it. And that's the key. You start going through this tunnel, from what I was told by my two friends, and that you are traveling into this tunnel. And when you reach that tunnel, it opens up to you. That realm opens up to you. You've reached something of great importance, and you begin to feel it. You begin to sense it. This other artificial light may not be the same type of light, that Magen was talking about, these lower realms that are trying to harness energy or trying to guide the soul back or keep it at limbo or in purgatory. That is a very strong possibility as well. And here's the key that I've discovered. And like Magen said, it really depends on you. If you're someone that is very fear-based and angry-oriented, and you were to die that way, guess what realm you're going to attract? You're going to attract the lower vibrational realm. You're not going to make it as far as you think you can into the light. If you're someone that sees the world, hey, I did the best I could, I loved everything and everyone, I loved my life, guess what? You have a better chance now of reaching that light, that end, and reconnecting with the source. So it's really an interpretation of the individual and the vibration that they came into this lifetime with, and how they awakened, or how deep did they go to awaken and remember who they really were or are, because we really never die, we just transform. So it really depends on the individual and how they perceive the light or the source. So
let me
Absolutely.
play devil's advocate for a moment. You know this. When a baby's born, the mother produces the love hormone, oxytocin, which could act as a hallucinogen, or the fact that we, according to the work of Dr. Rick Strassman and others, that we produce levels of LSD, which is a psychedelic. Could our body be producing these hormones in critical times, for example, when you're dying, in order to acclimate you to the pain that comes before you say goodbye?
Sure, absolutely. And by the way, we produce DMT in the food we eat. A lot of the green vegetables,
DMT, that's what I meant. Yes.
Green vegetables produce dimethyltryptamine, so it's activating the pineal gland. So yes, absolutely, the body can produce that. But where does the soul go after it leaves the body? Because you could only take that so far. After the soul lifts out of the body, and we know this, through science, and I believe we have instruments now that can measure this stuff, that now you can't say that it's the physical body anymore, because something, an essence, has left the physical body. And so where is it going? What is it reconnecting with? And this is where we go into interdimensional, talk, and we have to understand dimensions and frequencies and light and sound, because that's the realms we're talking about. I just want to just interject one other thing here. I read a wonderful book years ago. Somebody handed it to me, called The Afterlife of Billy Fingers by Annie Keegan. It is one of the best books. It's a very simple read, but it's one of the best books on understanding interdimensional travel and light and sound and frequency from a perspective of someone who was a real drug user, not a nice person, did not do good things in this world, and was able to connect with that light and that source and literally communicate with his sister, who he's very close to. And she's the one that wrote the book, but it was very profound and very convincing because of the stuff that he was conveying to her about the dimensions and other things that she did not know about that actually turned out to be true. So one of the best reads I've ever had. It was a simple read. You could read it in one day, and it described all of these processes of when we leave the soul. I mean, when we leave the body and we become that soul again, or that energy.
Yeah. So, and I'll just add into so I'm not just musing about what's possible out there. I'm telling you experiences that I've had. I've traveled through the dimensions. I've gone into the light in this lifetime consciously, and I've gone in there and I've experienced it. And what Joseph describes is absolutely accurate. It's a place of unbelievable bliss. It's unbelievable beauty. It's experiencing everything all at once, and it's a place beyond fear where you can experience it all at once and not get overrun by it. Because outside of that is where you would experience nirvana, which I've also experienced. And nirvana is an amazing feeling as well, the feeling of everything all at once, but it's still getting filtered through the individual soul. And so it's still getting filtered through what I call the emotional body if you're human, and you still have one. And so that can be a bit overwhelming, which is why we need to master our emotional bodies in order to be able to experience all that is all at once. And so you could explain things away with science, but what is science without spirituality? They're not separate. And I think that I have no problem using the word God, because that's just something it's a term that we all kind of know and understand to refer to a certain energy. And I think that part of the indoctrination and part of the programming here to keep us stuck in this reality has made people shy away from these terms, because it's part of what keeps you trapped down here, to be the intellectual atheist, the smart one that doesn't fall for the God trick. Well, God's not a trick. This is really what's happening. And there's a hierarchy of existence, and it's a wonderful and beautiful thing. And when we understand our place in it, we can learn how to move through it. And so it's pretty freaking amazing.
I remember the concept of purgatory, as you mentioned before, too, a place where you spend some time before you go to heaven, for example. But everything is about perspective. To some, earth could be purgatory. It could also be Eden, heaven, and to some, even hell. How do we know that we are not here in any of those realms?
Well, it's really based on your perception of reality. The moment you're born, you're being influenced by that energy or that timeline. And that's what I've discovered by studying astrology and numerology and the birthdays, is that it depends on your soul and what it needs to learn or experience in this lifetime. And so let's say, for instance, you come back as a Virgo. Okay, a Virgo is someone who is very analytical. They could be very pessimistic. They could be very much a critic. And I'm just generalizing again. It's not every Virgo, but you could be always saying no to everything, not wanting to experience. The symbolism of the Virgo virgin is not necessarily a sexual being, but is one that represents a chaff of wheat. And so let's say your perception going through reality now is of a Virgo. You are very skeptical of everything that is presented to you. On the one hand, that's a plus because you're digging deeper into the truth. But let's say you come into this lifetime as, let's say, a Pisces, and you believe everything that people tell you. And your lesson in this lifetime is to understand or discern what's true and what's not true. But in that poor Pisces mind, you see the higher realms of consciousness, because Pisces are very intuitive and they are very much in these higher realms of consciousness at times. And so you have a difficult time differentiating between what's real and what's not. So that soul goes through its experiences that it needs to go through. Does that make sense, Mel?
It does. It does. And by the way, you almost described one of my brother who's a Virgo, a lot of those attributes that you mentioned.
Okay. So it really depends on the individual and what it needs to learn in this lifetime, in this experience, because the soul is actually chose to be back here in this physical world. Because, I mean, we could have all stayed up in this higher realm of consciousness without physical form. We wouldn't be experiencing what we can in these physical suits. So it's actually a blessing or a gift to be in these physical suits and being able to move and touch and smell and taste and so on and so forth. But it really is up to the individual. So my only bone of contention is that depending on your birthday and what you came into this lifetime to do, you're going to perceive your reality in that way until you could reach these higher realms of consciousness in yourself, where you reach this awareness. You become more awake and aware that you're not your physical body, you're not your astrology, you're not your belief system, and you move beyond that. And that's the key. And that's what I try and help people understand, that because I went through that myself. So it's important to get to, and that's what I do right now in this world, and Megan does the same, and many others like us, is to get to people and help them understand who they really are. They're not their belief systems. They're not their bodies. They're not their titles. They're not their money. They're some form of energy in a physical container having these experiences. So, but it all depends on you and your experiences and your reality and, of course, the timeline you came in on. So that's the way I perceive it.
Yeah, the whole perspective thing is really important here. And that's what I work on a lot with people when I'm doing emotional work with them and helping, people on the path to emotional mastery is your perspective, your thoughts, they create your reality. And so the first time that I experienced nirvana, they said to me, do you understand now what a gift it is, the body that we gave you? Do you understand now that body gives you a respite from everything that is, so that you can have your unique experience and have the space to process what it is that you're seeing? And they asked me, do you think humans are ready to experience this? And I said, no, I don't think so, because it's very intense and it's very beautiful, but it's also really intense. And going back into the thoughts creating the reality. Well, another thing that they also said to me in my travels was that there are two things that keep you out of the kingdom of heaven: sense of fear and sense of self, right? And these are two perspectives that you can live in here down on this place. So the kingdom of heaven is something that exists within you. It's not a physical place for you to go to. It is a place that you can unlock through changing your perspective and changing your reality. And so you can experience things differently here, where we can see right now that we're not having the same experience as everyone else that's here on this planet. We're already living in two different realities, those of us who are aware of these concepts and those of us who are still stuck in the matrix. So this is also something that I noticed with people that deal with addiction, is that they are in a victim mindset and they cannot see any reason for gratitude. They only see their pain, and this allows them to stay in that addiction. And so it's how you can see, like for instance, I grew up in a house of I'm one of 9 children, and some of my siblings have suffered and struggled with depression and addiction, and we all grew up in the same home. But I had the ability to see the bright side and to be grateful, and they just didn't have that ability through the trauma. And so they experience it in a much different way, and they're experiencing life in a much different way. And so it really all has to do with your perception of reality, and remembering that we chose to be here, that it's a gift to be here, and it's only a hell if you think of it that way.
I think we can all agree that most of our history has been hidden from us, which reminds me of a conversation I had with the late Dolores Cannon years ago, who told me that most people are born with amnesia because we are here to learn a lesson. And if we knew our past, it would be the equivalent of cheating on a test. Your opinion on this?
I would totally agree with that. But imagine if you had a terrible lifetime in another life and you brought that back with you. Let's say, for instance, you were killed or you died in a horrific accident and you were able to remember that. How sad of a childhood would you have early on in your life? That would not be pleasant. So the amnesia is something that I guess we have to experience. The soul has to be wiped clean in order to give it another shot at experiencing something different. So, I think that's a necessity. And Dolores was right on the money. I've listened to a lot of her lectures and talks, and she was definitely way ahead of her time. So I would totally agree with her on that statement about wiping it clean. The problem right now is that we have a higher vibration and a frequency that's coming in that is blurring the realities between the past, present, and future. And it's something that most people are not used to. And so I can't tell you how many clients I've talked to who have said, well, I've always felt like I was psychic and I've had visions all my life and all this stuff, but I never done anything with it. And the first thing I'd ask is, what religion were you brought up in? And they would say Catholic or this and that. And I would say, well, there's the reason that it's been holding you back, because you have a conflicting belief system within yourself. And so we're seeing that psychosis unfolding today I'm sure we'll talk about the energy in a little bit, but there is a frequency change that's taking place. Mel, I don't know if do you hear the high-pitched squealing in your ears from time to time when you're quiet and by yourself?
I suffer of tinnitus for about 20 years now. Yes.
It's not tinnitus. It's a high-pitched frequency that's coming from the galactic center. And we'll get into all of that, but we'll let Megan answer the
I call it tinnitus, but it's this ring in my ears. Almost, do you remember, and those folks who are listening to us may or may not remember if you're older, the modems that we used to have in the 80s and 90s, and you hear that pitched noise, which is downloading information? Could there be a correlation in the types of ringing in the ears that we get, and all of a sudden we get this, I'm sleeping with this ringing, and the next morning I have this new concept that I had no idea it existed?
Mm-hmm. It's more like a
download.
It's more like a frequency thing. Think of it as like a dog whistle. It's in a frequency that's higher than your own vibration, and therefore it's coming to you like a kind of like a whistle. But yeah, you're getting a download of information, or you're tapping into a different frequency. And so, yeah. And then back to the other thing, I definitely agree with Joseph and Dolores Cannon about and what I call the great forgetting. And I also think about it from this perspective, is that you could have been a murderer in your last lifetime, and you get to come back and have the experience of being a good person, I want to say good person but that's more of an advanced topic, to choose the higher path, and by not being reminded of your mistakes in the past, you have a better chance of choosing that higher path. And so that's why I believe that the forgetting is also very beneficial. It gives you a fresh, clean slate to start with.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you this now. We've had fluoride in our water. I don't mean to deviate, but everything's connected. We've had fluoride in our water, aluminum in our air, glyphosate in our food, all create negative health effects. But I think they have been doing this for the last 50, 70 years in order to calcify our pineal gland. And I think it's not working. And this is why we get this new COVID-19 and ID 2020. I don't know if you've heard this, but supposedly this new vaccine, Moderna, supposedly the acronym for Moderna is modifying of endogenic RNA. And this apparently has some technology, nanobots inside, that supposedly are going to alter our chromosome 8, which is responsible for our empathy and our God connection. Have you heard this? Or in your psychic travels, have you noticed this?
Megan, do we know a little bit about this?
Take off your gloves.
We are very well versed in all of this. We basically are on the same wavelength. By the way, COVID, okay? What does COVID stand for? Certificate of Vaccination ID.
Yep.
Did you know that, Mel?
I did.
Okay, so we're all on the same wavelength. Basically, what you're suggesting and what we kind of have investigated, the same thing, is that humanity is absolutely being conditioned or being, let's say, altered in some way. Now, this is nothing new. This goes back to the 1800s when the powers that shouldn't be, and we know it starts with an I, the group that's behind it all, that realized that in the future that humanity was going to overpopulate this planet. So they started implementing a plan in the 1800s, the late 1800s, called eugenics. I'm sure both of you have heard the term.
Sure.
And it started actually here in the United States. Then it was brought to Germany and back
World
over
War II.
here.
Yeah.
And eugenics was all about sterilizing women and trying to reduce the birth rate. And so what you've got here, that was really the first program. And then it moved forward. They discovered war is a great way to wipe out people as well. So the bankers decided to have a lot more wars. But then they found another way. They discovered that, hey, why don't we spread some diseases and germs and so on and see if we could eradicate some of the population, or at the very least, at least sterilize them. So they started introducing these chemicals into the food and water, like fluoride. And then, of course, a nice chemical company out of Germany, IG Farben, which later became, I believe, Monsanto, and I'm sure we've heard that lovely name, became a food company. Gee, what a coincidence, right? That's like a Bayer aspirin, or the Bayer company in Germany now.
Well, Bayer bought Monsanto.
Right, exactly. They own Monsanto. So my point being is whoever's behind these companies has known all along that the agenda was to slow the birth rate down and to kill off a certain amount of population. So it all ties into the pineal gland being calcified, the food that we eat, the GMOs, all of this stuff. There's an agenda behind it, and it's huge. And it's all there. The evidence is all there. They've become so blazing, and they don't even care who knows anymore. They are just literally, Agenda 21, Agenda 2030. I mean, they're just out there doing what they're doing because they don't really care anymore. But it all ties into this.
There's a reason why they do it publicly, and it's called a tacit agreement. And basically what's going on in this reality is this. There are fallen beings who have left the grace of God, who can no longer feed off of source energy, who have turned this planet into their fuel source. And so all the people here are their food. And when we awaken to our sovereignty, to our true selves, we're no longer agreeing to this reality. And so what they do is they put it out in front of us. They put it into the movies, into the television, into the media. It's all out there for everyone to learn about. And when you know about it and you choose to continue to comply and to not claim your sovereignty, you are in a tacit agreement to continue being the fuel for these beings. And so that is the true root of all of these agendas, all of these different agendas. And it's really interesting, when all of this started, I happened to the whole COVID, the lockdown. I'm always being put around very interesting people. And so I happened to be hanging out with the woman that was running the Moderna trials. And she had all the binders on all the inserts on what was in them, and we had lengthy discussions about what it was. And her explanation of the mRNA was that it's just a messenger RNA that goes directly to the cell and tells it to fight against the virus. And so I talked to her, and she was running all the science and the people that are actually in the labs creating this have no idea about the overarching plan for what it is that they're working on. So I found that very interesting. She was a wonderful woman, very charming, very sweet, very intelligent, and had no really big view on the overall implications of what it was they were creating.
I remember in the 80s or the 90s, we had these companies, and I'm not going to mention them to give them free advertising, but it was antivirus, which we still have right now. But, many of those companies were caught giving the virus out to hackers and then coming out with the quote-unquote solution. And knowing that Bill Gates is part of all of this, he has as many degrees as we all have in medicine, right? All of a sudden, he's king of the world. He's the vaccine phase of the world. And we know that he's comes from a lineage of eugenicists. Why is it that such a big segment of the population looks at him as a god, as savior, without looking at his past?
Because the average person can't get beyond the fact that who they even are. You know, I hate to say this, but 70 to 75% of the population on this planet is still asleep. It doesn't understand things beyond what they could see or touch or hear. So they act as if, you know, like the ocean. For instance, I'll give you an example. The planet is made up of what? Primarily water, right? 70 to 75% of the mass of the Earth is made of water. So since we're talking about systems that are constantly duplicating themselves in symbolism and in geometry and sacred geometry and all of that, it's basically we keep reproducing, even ourselves, it keep reproducing. So let's say the Earth is 75% water. So it's natural that the planet would have 70 to 75% of just humans or souls that are just going to be very simplistic in their view of the world. Just like the body of water that just sits there and basically goes along with the Earth as it's moving, you see? So what's happening right now is that more and more people are awakening to how this system is working, how this matrix is working, because of two factors. One, because of technology, the internet, the smartphones, all of this stuff is helping us to exchange information at a faster rate. And two, the frequency is changing. The energy that's coming in is almost giving us more superpowers. If you notice that you're becoming more intuitive or you're becoming more sensitive, and that's an ability that we all have because the vibration is changing or going up a few notches that we were talking about earlier, the frequency of the ears, we're becoming more aware of things. And this is what the word apocalypse means. It's a Greek word that means to reveal, to unveil. So we're going down this path of unveiling and revealing how the powers that be are working and operating. This guy, Bill Gates, basically is spending millions of dollars to promote himself, to bribe people, to get him to write puff pieces. He's been scrubbing the internet of any negativity that he's ever had with Microsoft. We all know, those that have done the research know that he stole this from IBM. And, you know, even screwed over Steve Jobs at Apple.
Apple, right.
I mean, there's documentary after documentary of what he's done. But he scrubbed the internet because he's got a lot of money. And people, you know, they tend to worship people that achieve a level of awareness in society that they think that they deserve, like ball players. Okay, I'm sorry, but I don't see worshiping a ball player or somebody who's made billions of dollars or whatever it is. I don't worship any of them because I could see right through them. You know, if you're someone that is going to use your money and help other people and better the world, then I'll give you kudos all day long. But if you're someone that perceives, you know, that pretends to be this savior, oh, we're going to save the children, they're no longer going to have polio in these third world countries, but yet you're crippling them, or worse than that, you're sterilizing them, and you're saying that you're doing something good in the world, you're an outright liar. So people don't understand this. And this is the big issue that I seem to have with many people, especially with this election, and I'm sure we'll get into that, where they don't quite understand what is really going on. They just listen to mainstream media and watch a few videos, and they think they know everything. And that's the most frustrating thing.
Part of the problem is mind control. And this is another very real thing. I have seen the actual government documents, the original documents of the mind control program, and what it really is and what the agenda is. And there is mind control going on. We're being inundated with frequencies constantly. And there are certain states where it's very, very high. Like Arizona is one of those states. We've got a lot of those frequencies going on here. Oregon is another one of those states. There's a lot. It's a big experiment in mind control. And look what's happening in Oregon. Look at the civil unrest that's there. That is not a natural occurrence. And so mind control is the reason that people are such big fans of Bill Gates and are unable to see the forest through the trees. And so, or the other way around. I always get that that saying wrong. And so it's more than just cognitive dissonance or or people being asleep. There's mind control going on to keep people from asking the right questions, and this is what affects them. In fact, television, right? Television is a huge component. Like, it is mind control in action. So Tesla created the energy so that we could have the television, and so that in the future that it could help heal people and educate people. So you could sit in your home, in your living room, and the TV would play frequencies at you, or color therapies, or educate you on the actual true history of the world. That's really what was behind the television initially. That's why it was created. But it happened to be a great tool for mind control, and it got put into the wrong hands, and now that's what it does. So this is why I encourage people and invite people to turn off the news, turn off the television, stop watching it, stop getting programmed by this device, because that's what kind of keeps you in this like tacit agreement to continue this reality. And so I try to have a little bit of like just mercy or forgiveness or understanding for people that are still living in that reality, because there are a lot of things working against them to keep them there, and they've done an excellent job.
It also, and she's correct that everything she just said about the mind control, it really depends on the individual. When the time is right, to want to know more. The problem is most people, like she said, are being mind controlled, and they're living a simple existence. They go to work, they have a family, they have responsibilities, and they don't want to know anymore. But that's all going to change, and that is beginning to change, because of the frequency shift. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mel.
No, that's absolutely right. I'm glad you mentioned that, because we keep talking about AI on this program, and the fact that in the near future, perhaps in the next 10 to 20 years, we're going to have complete industries completely changed into AI. Take the transportation industry, all these truckers. And I hate to say, because I have a lot of truckers who listen to me, and I keep telling them, try to learn a new trade, because what they want is completely automate that, and it's going to be electric vehicles. And how one thing I learned recently is that you cannot charge an electric car's battery if the temperature is below 40 degrees. Does that mean that we're not going to have any food in the winter?
Right.
Yeah.
I would totally agree about the artificial intelligence, because that's what seems to be controlling this planet. When you dive deep into this topic of who really runs the world, there seems to be a program that is coming from higher realms of consciousness, or even, in this physical reality that seems to be controlling everything. Now, obviously that's pretty deep and pretty far out there for many. But yes, I would agree with artificial intelligence being a problem, because we already have these smartphones that are already listening in on us, or we have devices like the Amazon, what's her name, Alexa. We've tried this experiment with my friends who have Alexa in their house. Just sit around by Alexa and start talking about a certain product, and keep talking about that product.
And you'll see the ads.
And then go to your computer, and then you'll see the ads right there. So it's listening to everything. As a matter of fact, this program is probably going through a filter somewhere in Utah.
We're talking through AI right now.
Exactly.
Our phones have advanced AI in them, and again, I'm telepathic, and so I don't even have to say things out loud. I can just think about them, and then they show up on my phone as ads.
Well,
and I know I've never had a conversation with anybody about it. I've never uttered it out loud. And even today, I'm learning Spanish on my phone. I have the Duolingo app, and I'm learning Spanish. And I was on a particular lesson that was kind of hard, and I was like, this lesson's really hard. And then it sends me a free trial for Duolingo Plus, like, so that I don't have to get any questions. Like, if I don't get a penalty for getting questions wrong. So I know the phone listened to me and heard that, and it gave me the little pass so I would stay on the app. I'm still going to keep using it, but
not only
AI is all around us.
Not only does it listen to words, but one thing I noticed lately is that, for example, I was working the other day with some tools. I'm making banging sounds with the tools while you're working, with my phone in my pocket. Next time I go to social media, I was presented by all these tool things. Oh, buy these tools from Home Depot or this and that. I never had that before. The next day I'm working on a water fountain and you can hear the water falling. Not even mentioning the word tools or water, and immediately starts saying, oh, water fountain for your home and this and that. This AI not only detects words, but sounds, and it makes an interpretation of what you could possibly be doing.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to go into the deeper, like, kind of things around the AI, and that obviously it's a part of our reality and it's not going anywhere, right? But there are infinite timelines, and one of the things that we've been doing is we've been braiding those timelines together and collapsing the timelines to eliminate the ones that are simply based in AI. And when you go too far down the path of technology without focusing on the spirituality, without focusing on the emotional mastery, it's not the journey or the path you want to go down. That doesn't get you to the destination. There used to be a planet near Earth that was called Maldek, and Maldek went down this AI pathway, and their life became very, very comfortable, and it was so comfortable that people just became very complacent. And then some of them started to develop a sickness it was a sickness of the mind where they wanted more power. And so they started developing weaponry. And because everyone was so complacent and everything was so easy because of the AI, there was no one to fight against these people, and they ended up destroying their planet. And that was how, in this Earth cycle, because there have been many, many Earth cycles, the first inhabitants came to Earth. They were refugees from a planet that was nearby ours, which is now the asteroid belt that exploded.
Is that the asteroid belt?
Yeah, this is the asteroid belt. And it's not the only planet to go this way. It's not the only planet that this has happened to. But I'm always very reticent when people talk about these new advanced technologies that erase all of the human experience, basically, or the struggles of the human experience. I don't think that we're supposed to, like, clearly somebody's got their elbows on the table here on this game, and we need to get their elbows off the table and reset the board and balance things out here. But when we embrace technology as the solution to everything, instead of the emotional mastery and the spiritual path, we end up in those hollow realities. And there's a movie called The Giver, and it's also a novel, a dystopian novel called The Giver. And it was developed into a film in 2014. And it's an excellent film, and it really very well, it depicts this concept and this potential hazard very well. And I suggest people watch it.
And we have to take a one and only break. I want to get really deeper when we come back. And also, because of your God-given abilities of having this psychic ability to see the future. Some people say, just like you can remember the past, you can also remember the future. But some of us don't have that ability or don't know how to hone into the ability. But when we come back, I want to discuss the future, more into AI, more into our hidden history, and much more. How can people learn more about your work, Magen and Joseph?
They can go to planetswithin.com, or they can subscribe to the YouTube channel. And I put out a newsletter each month, so they could sign up for free at my either one of my websites, planetswithin.com or josephpanthony.com.
Or divinemissm.com. That's Divine MSM. There's a lot of videos on there as well. And I also have a YouTube channel, The Divine SM. And I also have amazing videos with Joe Anthony. It's been really interesting listening to him because I've never heard him talk about this stuff.
And I also want to discuss what's going to happen in the next few weeks. Everybody's on the edge of their seat. If you turn on the TV, you think you're living in a different world. You have to untap yourself and see the reality. But all of this when we come back with the Sedona Psychics, Magen Martinez and Joseph P. Anthony. This is Mel Hustlerick, and you are listening to Veritas. Don't go anywhere.
Thank you for listening to the first part of this important Veritas interview. To listen to the rest and all of our material, proceed to the member section or join the Veritas family by subscribing. Click on the subscribe button at veritasradio.com. You can make your purchase with a credit card, PayPal, cash, check, money order, and even cryptocurrency. We are now accepting Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Ethereum. Don't forget to visit the Veritas store for Focus Life Force Energy, MMS, CBD Pure Hemp Oil, Divinia Water, pure organic sulfur, flash drives with all our Sanitas and Veritas seasons, and other great products. And if you're listening on YouTube, like, subscribe, and share it. And click the bell to be notified when new interviews are